60 seconds. That's all it took for everything to change. One moment, the flight deck of a US Navy carrier is calm, jets being refueled, crews going through routine checks, yellow shirts directing traffic with practiced ease. The sea is steady, the sky is clear. It looks like just another day, and then it hits. A radar ping, fast, low, no ID, no response. Whatever it is, it's closing in, be fast. Alarms erupt. Orders fly. The Combat Information Center calls for an emergency scramble. Sirens blare across the ship. Within seconds, the deck transforms, from routine to combat mode. A single pilot bolts toward his jet, already halfway suited up. Steam hisses as the catapult charges. There's no time for hesitation, no checklist, no second chances. The mission is simple. Launch now, or risk everything. But here's the real question. What exactly was coming toward them? And why did it force a full-blown emergency launch off one of the most powerful ships in the US Navy? What happened in the next 2 minutes was anything but routine, and it might have just been a warning shot. 3 minutes earlier, everything was quiet. Below deck, the Combat Information Center, or CIC, hummed with its usual tension. No. Sunlight, just glowing screens and voices trading data. Then it happened. A sudden contact on radar, fast-moving, low altitude, no IFF signal, no flight plan, no response to hails. At first it looked like a glitch, but then came the second ping. Same vector, same silence. The radar operator didn't hesitate. Unknown air contact, inbound, low altitude. The officer of the deck didn't wait, either. Initiate red alert, emergency launch protocol, now. That was the trigger. Up on the flight deck, chaos ignited. Not the panicked kind, but the kind that only happens when hundreds of people move like one machine. Deck crew shifted into overdrive. Blast deflectors rose, jet fuel lines locked off, weapons teams snapped. Into motion. From CIC to the air boss, the message was simple. Get a jet in the air, immediately. Because whatever was heading toward the USS Roosevelt wasn't just unidentified. It was intentional, and closing the gap at 500 knots. But who would be ready to launch with only seconds to react? That answer was already running, literally. Lieutenant Jake Dusty Harper didn't need the full briefing. He heard the alert, saw the looks on the crew's faces, and knew exactly what it meant. His Super Hornet was fueled, armed, and sitting ready on Catapult 2, and he was the closest pilot to launch status. By the time the flight deck officer barked his name, Harper was already halfway down the corridor, helmet in hand. He sprinted across the deck, ducking under jets past yellow shirts waving signal paddles like symphony conductors under pressure. The roar of engines and the scream of the catapult steam line echoed like thunder. But Harper never flinched. He climbed into the cockpit like he'd done 100 times before, but this wasn't routine. His HUD was already lit, fuel topped, off-targeting systems live. Green shirts swarmed the aircraft, locking in final checks. The launch bar dropped. The blast deflector rose behind him. In front, only sky and a threat he couldn't see yet. Throttle full, Harper called in over comms. Launch bar engaged. The CAT officer crouched, watching for the final thumbs up. Harper gave it, and then fire. The catapult exploded forward. In just over 2 seconds, 66,000 pounds of steel and jet fuel tore off the deck, climbing. At an impossible angle, Harper was airborne, armed, alone, and flying straight into the unknown. But what exactly was out there, and how close was it already? As Harper climbed through 10,000 feet, the flight deck behind him shrank into a blur. Ahead, only blue sky, and something hiding just beyond radar range. His comms crackled to life. Raven 1, be advised, contact still inbound. No transponder, altitude holding low, possible terrain masking. He toggled to the data link view. The E-2D Hawkeye circling above the fleet was feeding him live intel. A dot on the screen pulsed, slow, steady, closing. Then came the voice from AWACS. Possible Iranian UAV, Shahed 197 variant. Unknown payload, could be armed. That changed everything. These weren't just surveillance drones. The Shahed series had a history, deployed in Iraq, Syria, even the Red Sea. Cheap, expendable, and often loaded with improvised explosives. Sometimes they were guided, sometimes they just dove. But either way, they were dangerous. Harper's voice was calm, but inside, his mind raced. "Roger," he replied, moving to intercept. Visual scan inbound. He banked right, dropped altitude slightly, and accelerated into a shallow dive. The ocean flashed below. Every second, the contact grew closer. Then, he saw it. A low-flying object hugging the waterline, wings steady, small prop in the rear, no cockpit. Boxy fuselage. Definitely unmanned. Definitely not random. It wasn't just flying, it was flying toward them. And under the belly of that drone, something was mounted. Something that did not belong there. On the Roosevelt, the mood didn't shift to celebration. No cheers, no fist pumps. Just silence. Controlled, focused silence. Everyone knew what could have happened if the timing was off, if Harper's catapult had jammed, if a sensor failed, if the drone had made it another mile. Because here's the truth. Emergencies at... See, don't forgive hesitation. The systems work until they don't. And when they don't, people get hurt. Sometimes worse. In 2022, an F-18 missed the deck on the USS Carl Vinson. It tore off the bow and dropped into the sea. The pilot ejected, but multiple crew were injured during recovery. In 2020, a fire on the USS Nimitz erupted during a launch sequence. One spark turned a routine op into hours of chaos. That's what a half-second delay looks like. That's why every pin, every valve, every hand signal on deck matters more than most people will ever realize. This time, everything worked, but that's not guaranteed. And next time, it might not. The jet. Harper flew. It wasn't just fast. It was built for this. The F-18 Super Hornet, the Navy's airborne ace, twin engines, carrier-borne, Mach 1.8 top speed, a combat radius over 200 miles, capable of carrying nearly 18,000 pounds of weaponry. But raw numbers don't tell the story. The Super Hornet isn't just powerful, it's smart advanced ESA radar, infrared tracking, helmet-mounted targeting systems, live data streaming from AWACS, other aircraft and ships below. That's how Harper knew what he was facing, even before his eyes locked on the drone. The Super Hornet is more than a fighter. It's the sword, the shield and the sensor. And on a carrier deck where every second counts, that advantage becomes the difference between mission success and something far worse. But none of it, not the tech, not the jets, not the weapons, works without the people. On that flight deck, there were no second chances. Green shirts ran diagnostics like their lives depended on it. Red shirts armed weapons with triple-checked precision. Yellow shirts risked their own safety to clear the way. Every one of them knew, when the alarm sounds, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall back on your training, and that's exactly what saved the day. The drone was shot down, the carrier never took a hit, the systems worked, the people did their jobs, but that mission was more than an intercept. It was a message, maybe even a test. A slow, disposable drone pushed the edge of the carrier's defenses. It wasn't random, and it wasn't innocent. So now ask yourself, what would have happened if the launch failed? If the drone carried something worse? If this was just the first of many, because when you're out in the open sea, the next threat is never hypothetical. It's just a radar ping away.